We live, in my view, in what I would call a state of delusion. Feminism needs to assert itself. History has lots of examples of manliness. And then you add to it that there's no real definition of what a man is. So you turn to Andrew Tate. So you turn to Jordan Peterson. And it gives you that sense of impending doom. Hey friends, Mumbai calling again. That's right, it's time for the Gora Monologues. I'm your host, Jeff Goldberg, broadcasting to you live from Studio 4C here at the Jeff Goldberg Studio in Bandra, Mumbai, India. We're going to get into some stuff that I've been thinking a lot about, which is something that I think is very important and actually kind of the low pressure system we're all feeling. You know, when it's about to rain, your body just is able to start to tell the barometer is dropping and the pressure in the air sort of makes you feel like something's about to happen. And it gives you that sense of impending doom or trouble, right? We all know that feeling, okay? And then we look up and we see the sky at a distance is gray and those fast-moving clouds that is the storm are approaching us, and we know very soon it's going to cover us. Well, I think that time has passed, in fact. I think today we are living in the middle of the storm. But the problem is that we live in a world today where we are so wrapped up in something that we can't even see what's actually in front of us. We live, in my view, in what I would call a state of delusion. A real state of delusion where nothing makes sense anymore. Where black is white, where red is blue, where up is down, where no is yes, and alternative facts rule the roost. Now, we all can point to maybe a moment in time when this happened. We can blame social media or technology. We could blame the fake news, the real news. What is the real news anymore? What is news anymore? We could blame 1,000 and 100 million things. We could hang it up on the pandemic. We could go further back to the Great Recession of 2008. We could talk about the election of this president or that prime minister. We could talk about the terrible events of the Syrian crisis. We could talk about the Israeli and Gazan crisis. We could talk about Ukraine. There's so many places that we could point to where the delusion began, or where we saw the delusion, or where in this fevered moment we felt delusion. But the fact is, if you boil it down, we live in a state of delusion, a constant state of we don't know what's real anymore. And why is that? Honestly, friends, I don't know. And I wish I could offer you an answer, and I wish that I could help you navigate this moment. But I, too, am wrapped up in it. I, too, am in the middle of this storm. I, too, can hear the thunderclaps and the gray clouds, and the fog is everywhere. And it is deeply disconcerting. And it is tragic in a way that I never thought I'd live in my life. You know, I'm a 20th century kid. I remember the 20th century. You know, I came of age in the 1990s. And I remember the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. I remember the end of communism in 1991. And I remember the 90s. They weren't perfect. And certainly they weren't perfect for everybody. But in the 1990s, generally speaking, there was a sense of hope that was pervasive in the world. The end of the imperium that was the Soviet regime of 70 plus years came crashing down. We witnessed the move towards democracy. We witnessed the move towards liberal thinking, free speech. These things were actually happening. They weren't things we were debating. These were things that we collectively all shared and believed in. And somehow, all of that just evaporated in the new millennium. Of course, we still hear people talk about freedom and freedom of speech, censorship. All of the buzzwords that made up that moment are still fluttering around. But the way they're defined and the way they're weaponized by people today is so unbelievably confusing. And the places we used to go to find some sort of North Star or some sort of compass where we could say, hey, that's the direction we want to go, or that sounds real. Even those resources, like our politicians and our parliaments and our governments and our congresses and our, the fourth estate, which is the news media, all of them seem to be just pushing their own agenda. And the worst part of it all is they all seem to think that they have a franchise, an exclusive franchise, on the right of truth. And ultimately, we live in this ocean of conflicting facts, conflicting ideas, conflicting morals. How do you come of age in that? How do you live in that? I really don't know. Now, I know that I'm pointing out something that all of you already feel, right? And the question then becomes, I feel this fever. I feel this confusion. What do I do? Well, the short answer to that question is, take the time to actually do the work, to learn about the topics that are close to you. Start to trust the process and less the destination. Start to look at things in a 360-degree way, where you start to develop a more wholesome opinion about things that you agree with and things you don't agree with. In fact, embrace what you don't agree with more than what you agree with. Why? Because what you don't agree with is going to teach you about something that you may or may not have already known. It does not mean that you have to evolve or change your opinion. Okay? People are so frightened to change their point of view that they think somehow by evolving into something new or developing something new, they lose themselves. Folks, the only constant is change. But we're all so dependent upon these definitions and these material objects that define us, our address, our car, the school we go to, the school we send our kid to, or whatever it is you use to define yourself. We're so obsessed with maintaining them that we don't realize we're losing something far, 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 far more important. It's our collective sanity that's at stake here. I mean, obviously something is very, very wrong. You don't have to really look very hard at much to see wars and famines and immigration and racism. And look, man, it's not about wokeism versus anti-wokeism. It's not about all these catchwords and clickbait things that turn people on. It's about simply, do I feel okay in myself? And the answer is actually kind of not really. Because I just don't know what I can trust anymore. And that is so destabilizing for a human being. You don't need to be a psychologist to know that when a person is in a state of distrust, alarm bells go off. Okay, you don't need to be a neurologist to know that that part of your brain, which is right behind the prefrontal cortex, I'm not even going to attempt to say it, but it's called the amygdala, all right, which my editors will edit in the name of it for you. Okay, amygdala, I think is actually how it's pronounced, but I'm just having some fun. Okay. That smoke detector in your brain that tells you something's wrong is going off all the time. And just like a real smoke detector in your home where it's screaming, you just want it to go off. You just want to switch it off. You get up there on your ladder or on your chair, you start hitting it with your shoe trying to knock the battery out, and you're just losing your bloody mind. Because all you feel is smoke. All you hear is sound. All you feel is fury. Like how I worked the Shakespearean quote in there, I'm pretty impressed with myself too. But friends, we have to stop this delusion. And the only way to do that is the only way human beings have dispelled any mystery, any delusion, or any misinformation or fake news they've ever had, which is this: get yourself educated. Do the work of learning about the topics that are close to your heart. And don't be such a curmudgeon that you can only see your side of the aisle, your side of the street. There's much to learn from the opposite side, like I was saying before. You can only know the whole picture and be an authority on it when you've internalized what you agree with and what you don't agree with. Hold your truths up to the light of possibility and look at them for what they are, not what you wish them to be. But today we live in a world where capitalism and marketing and advertising and social media, and everyone is so obsessed with telling you who you think you are or what you might be that you drown in it. And here's the thing to my Gen X friends and the friends of my parents who are baby boomers. We don't understand you millennials, but at least the millennials made some sense. Surely they were pains in the ass, and I'm sorry, my millennial friends, you still kind of are pains in the ass, but I like you guys. Because there's one thing you guys have that the Gen Zers are missing. You guys have grit when you want to. You're willing to put up the fight and do what you want to do when it's meaningful to you, and I like that about you. And maybe you're smarter than us Gen Xers and baby boomers. I'm not so sure. The Gen Zers, I'm a little worried about you guys. Got to be honest with you. You're a bit slippery. But here's the thing that makes me more worried about you, is that you're allowing people to inform you, influence you, and create the shape of your generation and the narrative of your generation who do not have your best interest at heart. And let me explain what I mean. Masculinity. Whoa. Yeah, we just got there. Masculinity. A topic that seems to be very readily discussed today. Now, folks, I am not a psychologist, not a sociologist, not a historian, not an anthropologist, not a medical doctor. I'm none of the above. I'm a filmmaker broadcasting to you from my studio here in Mumbai. But as an observer of this debate, from the Jordan Petersons to the Aaron Tates to the Gloria Steinems of the 1970s and the suffragettes all the way back in the early 20th century, what I can say and what I see is this. I get that it's tough to be a young man today. I get it. Can't be easy to come of age in a world where feminism is asserting itself and it makes you feel insecure about your masculinity. But, fellas, feminism needs to assert itself. I'm right there with you. But hang on a second. The problem that we have in the world of masculinity is that there's no definition of masculinity. Not one that is a survival, sociological one that young men can point to. And surely history has lots of examples of manliness, going off to war, soldiering, knights, armor, shining, honor, respect, giving your word, being reliable, all of these things. But let's be honest with you. The vast majority of you sitting here watching this on YouTube, possibly at 3 in the morning eating your Cheetos and or whatever snack it is that turns you on, you're not going off to war anytime soon. Inshallah, God willing, you don't have to. Of course, my Ukrainian brothers and sisters, my Russian brothers and sisters, my heart breaks for you. The same goes for my Israeli and Gazan friends and everyone else, from the Houthi rebels to the Saudis. My heart breaks for you that you have to experience that. But let's be fair. Most of us aren't going to war. So men now find themselves in this vacuum where the place where we asserted ourselves the most historically is not really a place, an arena where we have a chance to do that anymore. That's one problem. And then you add to it that there's no real definition of what a man is in a useful sort of how to be a man or a manhood for dummies way. And then you have this very justifiable wave, tsunami of feminine energy asserting itself in the 21st century, because finally, after 150,000 years of our species, these ladies are standing up for themselves. And of course, it's all consuming, and it can make you feel small. It can make you feel drowning. It can make you feel overwhelmed. So you turn to Andrew Tate. So you turn to Jordan Peterson, because they offer you simple solutions and clear worldviews that you can plug yourself into. Now, I have nothing against these guys. In fact, I've listened to Andrew Tate's podcasts, and I found them horribly frightening, but absolutely airtight in their logic. I'm not a fan of the logic, but there was a logic nonetheless. Jordan Peterson is a really smart guy, and he uses really smart words, and he's very intelligent. So, of course, when someone's speaking intelligently and they have all that professor gravitas about them, they obviously bring a certain degree of justification and or air of, I know what I'm talking about. But fellas, folks, there's not one definition of what it is to be a man any more than there's one definition of what it is to be a woman or what it is to be any person on earth. And when you allow yourself to be defined by simple truths, unfortunately, you deny the complicated niches of yourself. That doesn't mean that simple paradigms and or simple thoughts are not part of the conversation. It just means that they're not the whole conversation. Nothing exists in absolutes. But the minute we start to take the bait of an absolute and a worldview that alienates others whilst it gives us an identity, we start to feel like we are part of something. And that something becomes so sacred to us that we can't allow anything to tarnish it, including a opposing view. Friends, the reason democracy exists is because at the core of democracy is compromise. And compromise is what human beings have had to do our entire existence, albeit compromise with the environment, compromise with the animals in the forests and jungles, Serengetis and deserts in which we lived, compromise with the people in the next tribe over, and or compromise with the people in our very own tribe. Compromise and good behavior are the glue that hold it all together. And we live in this state of delusion. Masculinity and toxic masculinity, which is very much on the rise, is one example of how we're allowing absolute truths and universally and unilateral worldviews dictate our behavior. We're failing each other. Because here's the deal. To end this delusion, we need each other more than ever before. We need our tools of education and critical thinking. The number of YouTube videos I've watched recently with young men standing behind backdrops that are quite pretty and rather expensive looking, talking about their worldview, about politics, or about femininity, or about whatever topic it is close to their heart, it's kind of overwhelming because they're not being inclusive in their conversation. And the minute you exclude any viewpoint from the conversation, you enter into the realm of delusion, because you're allowing only the perspective that you want to lens to be the truth with which you are going to project yourself. And the reason that we have so many YouTubers, podcasters, and now the Gora Monologues is because we're looking for some light in this world of confusion, darkness, and storm. My friends, I hope this talk agitated you to think a little bit. I didn't offer any solutions because there aren't really any that I could give you, except go out and get yourself educated, go out and get yourself engaged, and don't be afraid to listen to experience, to converse with what you don't agree, because that is the only way you're really going to become an educated person. And by the way, the Beavis and Butthead t-shirt was not an accident.